Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for October 7th, 2021. I'm Benji Fisher moderating, and also present are Srishti Bankar, who is sharing her screen, Erin McHale, Narendra Singh, Offer Shal, Ralph Kohler, Simo Helston, and Utkarsh Patidar. I hope I didn't mangle anyone's name too badly. Shrishta or Narendra, go ahead and talk about your user testing.
Sure. Hi, I am Srishti. I'll be doing a quick demo of the current state of Project Browser. It basically adds a feature to the Extend tab where we can browse through all the modules from different sources without having to leave the site. So this was demonstrated in the Grease node before, so most of you might have seen it already, but we'd really appreciate a general overview from the usability perspective this time. So firstly, the modules are filtered by default according to the recommended filters, and all the applied filters are seen here as pills. We can remove these filters, we have a clear all button, and we can get the recommended filters back too. And along with these, the modules can also be filtered according to their categories with these checkboxes. And the results are seen here of all the category filtering and the search as well. Other than that, there are these two options to view the projects. Grid shows concise cards, while the list view shows them in a more spacious manner. The user can choose between them as per their preference by that's it. And if we want to install a module, we can click on the download button. We get a pop-up with all the instructions and the commands to do so. And like clicking the title takes us to a dedicated route showing the details of the project. There is a breadcrumb navigation that takes us back to the browsing page. And that is all right now. And there is another feature that was added other than what we have demonstrated in the Grease node before. So if we go to the settings page, we can enable multiple source plugins at once. And now we will get all these plugins over here. So now we can see there are two tabs, each showing a separate plugin. And basically, if we search for a module, both the tabs will have their own categories to filter out. And the second tab that shows core modules will have these categories, and other plugins might have other categories as well. So, and the search works globally for all the tabs. So if we search for layout builder in a particular tab, it works for all the tabs simultaneously. And we can see that we see 98 results in the Drupal mock tab and 2 results in Drupal core. And that's it. Like, that's the whole thing. Please let us know of all the things that like raise a usability concern and should be addressed. Yeah.
Okay, hang on a second. Just give people a chance. Does anyone have any questions about? Does anyone need a reminder of what this browser initiative is about?
I know about the browser, but I was thinking of asking, you were doing user testing in Prague. It was overlapping some of the other schedules, so I couldn't unfortunately attend. But are those results synthesized or implemented in this version?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
In DrupalCon Prague, there was 2 sessions about user testing, project browser, I think. So I was wondering if those that data has been already processed, or is it something that is like from this version you are presenting now?
So there was already some user testing at DrupalCon Prague, and got some feedback there. Have you implemented any of that feedback? Have you made those changes yet?
Yeah, actually, some of them are being handled, and issues are created, I guess, for all of them from all the listening sessions as well. And we are on it, and we're handling them one by one. And Narendra, if you have any more insight on this.
Yes, like we wanted to have like what we'll do, we will add those issues based on like issue queue, like suppose usability testing, something like that, or like UX related issues based on I don't know like if we have right now have anything for project browser, and we will tag all the issues which we find out in today's meeting, and like if there are already created in the existing issue queue, so that we have a center place to look and work upon.
So Ralph says in the chat that Chris opened a few UX related issues after DrupalCon. So I guess the answer is that some of the feedback is being addressed. It's in progress.
I think this is all obviously we went through this quite quickly. Might be good to have a meta issue that brings all that together. It's kind of discussed a little bit earlier, but so that all the usability issues that are being worked on could be brought under a meta issue, but also for the referencing for today's meeting, I think a meta issue would probably be good. What I'd suggest is maybe we should go, because in the demo there, you sort of jump through a lot of screens. So maybe we should take it one screen at a time, if you like. We only very briefly saw the screen with the installation instructions, for instance.
And I guess, can you clarify what you're hoping to get out of today's meeting? Do you want to talk about the process of user testing, or do you want us to identify possible usability issues here?
Yeah, the later one, maybe if like it would be great if you could point out a few usability issues that might like those are better to handle right now than later. Like we are aiming to get this to core, so before landing there, we need to pass the usability testing. So everything, like whatever you can pinpoint to, it would be great if you could do that. From your perspective is what I can say. Like, and like what you said about the like going through one page at a time, that might help too. We can do that. We can create an issue and go one page at a time.
Go ahead, Thomas.
So I don't know if this is out of scope, but when I look at interfaces like this, especially knowing how many modules that D.O has on it, I mean, seeing that number there, 42,000, whatever, I'm not seeing the ability to hide or mark modules as I don't want these to show up in my search results anymore. And a corresponding ability to see what I've marked as do not show me anymore. So to be able to undo that, that would probably be one of the first usability things I'd recommend based upon my experience and just dealing with applications where you have to go through so many different things. It's unfortunate when the same search results result in the top page being filled with things that you're not interested in. So some ability to manage that would be very critical to me, given the size of the number of modules that D.O has on it. Thank you.
I can't think of any other place where are you suggesting that on a one-by-one basis we check off, don't show me this module ever again?
It's very common in game UIs. When dealing with lots and lots of components and things you don't want, you can be like X, hide this, whatever, mark it for garbage, etc. There's different reaping mechanisms that they use, but this is very similar to item manipulation. Like there's not a lot of software that I've looked at that has potentially thousands or tens of thousands of items that you search through. And I just know from D.O, like not decades, 12 years on D.O of just trying to search for projects and always getting things that are old, outdated, that I do not want to see anymore. And they just keep on showing up in search results like a bad penny. And so something along those lines fits the pattern I've seen in other software.
Okay, I was thinking more in terms of online shopping. Like this interface looks fairly familiar to me from going to Newegg or Amazon or Staples, where you can add some filters and so forth. But I'm not. Go ahead.
I do have a problem with Amazon. Like I don't use Amazon for exactly this problem. Like it shows me search results I don't want and I can't exclude. So that is a really valid example, and it's one that has a usability problem for me.
Okay, it's interesting. So there is a model in some games, you said.
Yeah, it's pretty common in any game that has large inventory manipulation management. So anything where you have a whole lot of disparate objects and there's some set of those that you don't want to have to keep on looking at.
Okay, I learned something new today. Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to, so just to dig into that slightly deeper, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just so understand what you were saying there, Thomas. Because I think the thing here is you would go in, you would come to Project Browser to perform very specific actions. Like you would come to, you would come to like search for modules or search for solutions to problems. But you're also coming to like, you want to install a module. And so you come here, you search for it, you install it, right? I'm trying to think I'm just wondering if you could give me an example of specific example of like when you think that might be useful, like to hide.
So back in the day, I used to frequently look for different alternatives for simple SAML PHP, which is used for doing SAML authentication. There's a whole bunch of different modules. There used to be a whole bunch of different modules that were in different development stages. Some of them hadn't been touched for years. They still showed up in the search results every time. If I had gone through, experimented with, or used in some way, shape, or form a module and then excluded it from the set that I wanted to keep on looking for when I was looking for better alternatives for my site, I want to be able to exclude those things because there is a lot of cruft and we don't exclude things from and I don't think that we necessarily want to, but if as a community we embrace everything that is being built and it's very difficult to filter it out, it makes maintaining visibility on things that you may not have installed but you want to compare or be able to compare in the future, or things that just because of string, you look up ARA and you keep on seeing the same thing there frequently. Anyway, that's the situation where I've definitely seen it in the past, where I either get unwanted things, and again, like I acknowledge, hey, if I accidentally hid something, I do want to be able to undo it. And in a game UI, it's basically marking something as trash or garbage, marking something as very important, show this at the top of searches every time, and leaving something in the default state, which is just show it up, and it neither prioritizes and loves it, nor does it mark it as something that you don't care about and please hide.
Okay. I see some questions in the chat. Narendra is asking for feedback on the pop-up and maybe rather than reading these comments in the chat, maybe we could look at that together.
So basically right now we have this pop-up, and like with the new functionality, which like with the package manager, what will happen is like there will be some drop down which have other options to download and enable the module using Composer. That is right now not in this branch, but we are working on that. So the thing is, like what I assume is that this pop-up will remain for in future also, because like if suppose a user want to see what are the instructions or how he can download through Composer, then this pop-up might remain. So is there any usability issues in this pop-up, or should we remove this pop-up? And like we have other options, like when the package manager will be integrated fully in the UI part, so it user can directly click on download or enable button, and then the module will be enabled on the website.
Okay, Ralph wants to reply to that, and Aaron, did you forget to put your hand down, or do you also want to reply to that? Ralph, go ahead.
I guess Aaron was first, so.
No, go ahead.
I've already written it in the chat. I've applied the experimental patch, and from my understanding, currently when the patch is applied, you get a drop-down button with view commands as label, and that view commands leads to that modal. And I think the idea to provide that kind of information might be useful, but somewhere else, because it's with that new patch, everything is possible directly from via the UI, and that way, yeah, it's not really necessary to keep it to provide it as a default action that prominent to the user, and it's sort of counterproductive from my perspective, because you want to do the action instead of know how it's done in the background as an educational step first, and you have an extra click to reach the actual action. That way, yeah, I've already left a comment in that regard in the issue for that.
Yeah, so certainly the end goal of this project, as I understand it, is that people shouldn't have to use Composer from the command line. They should be able to install things. So Ralph, you're saying that that already works?
Yes.
Interesting. Go ahead.
We were actually planning to that is being worked upon, only the backend is ready right now, and the front end is being worked upon for it. So we were planning that we address the usability issues with the current status of this project browser, and then when that gets in, we can go through that as well later. So do you think focusing on the current status is a good idea, or should we discuss that too right now?
Well, let's see what Aaron has to say.
Thanks. Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, I think we should look at this, because as I understand it, and I might be incorrect, if you don't have package, even when we have that install via the UI, even when package manager is not enabled, I believe that is kind of optional in a sense. Like if package manager is not installed, then I guess it would fall back to this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm just looking at the text on here, because generally what we also do at these meetings is we'll review the wording and the text and things. And there's nothing immediate about the wording that jumps out at me. I think, all the links, looking at obvious things like the instructions are clear, like, step 1, step 2, all the links are clearly labeled, which is good. The sentences are quite short. It's good. The only concern I have, and it's kind of on the fringes of usability, but it's the fact that Drupal doesn't ship Drush by default. So if you're using this and then you go to step 2 and you see, oh, I can run this command, it's, we don't provide Drush by default. So my concern is like recommending, here, go and run this Drush command when it's doesn't come with core. I don't think that's something I guess I'm just not comfortable with that being recommended. Practically most people, yeah, will probably have Drush, but again, it's a thing of like out of the box, if someone new coming to this, okay, they've got Composer because that's the thing that Drupal requires. Maybe the solution here is like either we need to be clearer that, okay, Drush is a thing that is you have to go and install, or we don't recommend, we just leave out the Drush stuff, or something else. But yeah, that's the only thing that kind of comes to mind with this, is that could potentially be an issue. And again, that's also probably more a question for the core committers as well. They might have that question.
Ralph gives a thumbs up to that comment, and I think Simo has a comment too. Or just a thumbs up to that.
Yeah,
Everybody say the same thing.
Yeah, also a comment on that download term. I think the current version of the terms to recommended terms is that instead of like here, instead of download, I think we should use add.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing. That's
Yeah.
a long-running issue is to update the terminology we use for that. And I think we're currently settled on add. So the heading, one add, and then instead of this will download the module to your code base, this will add the module. Go ahead, Thomas.
I just wanted to point out that in support of Aaron's point, when we say install and we talk about using Drush, the challenges on sites like simplytest.me or other hosting sites where you do not have command line level access, we're basically making Drupal really not usable. So this model assumes that you have access to the command line to run Drush in the first place.
And Ralph gave us a link in the chat to the issue discussing add versus download. Who's sharing? Srishti, would you mind opening that link just for a second for the sake of the recording?
Yeah.
And the issue number is 2888657. Less confusing and more consistent wording needed in module and theme add install update. Thanks. I don't think we have to look too closely at this. You can go back to the other page. Aaron, you want to say something else?
Oh, sorry, that's forgot to put the hand down, but just to speak to something Thomas said, I think I will point out that you kind of do. I mean, in step one we're recommending using Composer. So if you get to the screen, you kind of do need command line access anyway. So you would have already needed that for step one before step two. I guess though, like practically speaking, like by the time, this is the thing, is like practically speaking, let's say 95% of people will not see the screen. They'll go to the package manager installation and all that will happen behind the scenes. I'm also thinking of like, yeah, I'm just stuck on that second point of like, okay, if we're recommending, how do we recommend you install it? Like either, okay, you can use Drush if you have it installed, or go to the modules page. I guess the thing visually here is the going to the modules page, there's a line there that says to install, and then it says to use this module you must install it, visit the modules page. That visually is a lot smaller than the big code block that has the Drush command in it. So maybe that needs to be like an action link, because that's a pretty important thing. Like if you look at that visually, there's the big download heading, and then there's the big Composer, code block there. Then there's the big install heading. Then there's the big Drush install command. What we probably want is like a big action button with, a link styled as a button that takes you to the modules page. I guess that would be what I would say as one thing to add there, rather than just it being a paragraph there with a link to the modules page.
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
was
a good
thinking.
point.
Yeah, it's good to give more weight to that option that's kind of always available.
Good point. So I guess the next step for this is a little bit of design help, because where you put that that link to the modules page is really a design question rather than a usability question, and no obvious solution jumps out at me. Shall we move on to other parts of the interface? And I guess really there are two parts to this project, and one is discovering modules, and then the second one is installing them. And I don't want to try to tell the people working on the module what order to do things in. If they want to focus on discoverability first and have the manual instructions for using the command line to install things, I understand that that will change later on in the process. Simo, go ahead.
Yeah, I could say a couple of things about those cards with the individual modules in them. So one thing would be that usually that centered text is more difficult to read than left or right aligned. So if the description, the longest part of the text would be left aligned, it would be more readable. And another thing is that there is this certain icon on each of the modules listed here. So I'm guessing it might be related to security policy, because it kind of looks like a shield. But that's something that is not very obvious, and especially because there are kind of two different filters there, maintained and covered by security policy, and there is no icon for maintained. So it's kind of a, if some of the filters kind of are displayed or kind of result in having an icon, it's kind of a not so clear, especially because I think there is an icon for something to do with maintenance being maintained in Drupal.org pages. So that's something that might be better clarified.
Do you think that a key somewhere on the page to say what this symbol means would help? As Srishti demonstrated, when you hover over it, you get title text, although that's not accessible to everyone. So do you think that a key on the page for what the various elements mean, or would you suggest something else?
It could be useful, and another place where it could be, I don't know if it's something, so usually I don't like to combine that kind of tags with icons, but it could be somehow when we have that filter tag covered by security policy, like in the filters box, it could have that kind of the same icon to match it there.
It is
Not
there
sure.
in the filters box.
Yeah, so yeah, but yeah, so it's there hidden. So hiding information. Yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, now that it's there, it kind of makes sense, but it could be shown in the kind of if it's displayed in that where it's the selected filters are shown, then so that it would be visible at the same time. But yeah, okay, I didn't notice that it's there. So that's a good thing.
Okay, as long as we're talking about the cards, is there other information that you would like to see there? Are there important statistics that you think about when deciding whether to use a module? Do you want to see usage statistics, whether there's a full release? We want to be cautious about adding too much information to the cards, but we do also want to keep in mind what this is being used for. Ralph, go ahead.
If you take if you switch to the list view, there you have the number of active installs. For example, there's an issue open to add that number of active installs also to the cards in the grid view, but that hasn't landed yet. But my biggest problem on the cards, on one hand, I agree totally with Simo about the left alignment for the text instead of the centered or you call it on the grid view. But my problem is the communication of the state, especially as soon as you use the experimental patch for installing inside the UI a module. It's pretty difficult to know in which state a single card is. Is it not yet added? Is it added? Is it not yet installed? Or is it already installed? And then you have also, for example, if I take a look at the gray button, it's installed. And if you click on installed, you get forwarded to the extend page. So that's unexpected. And installed communicates a state. And the others communicate basically, currently it says download for an action and install for an action. And yeah, which could be also add and installed. Enabled is currently and should be installed basically. And those are actions, and installed is basically a state. And that way it's difficult to figure out when you search which of those search results are already installed, which are not installed, which are enabled. It's difficult to figure out. It's basically you have to rely onto the button and then make assumptions. But it would be helpful to have maybe a second label or signifier what's the actual status, that you can, with a glimpse of an eye, directly see, that one is already added, that one is already installed, that could be installed, and so forth.
It could be located somewhere else, like in the one of the upper corners.
Yep.
So that it would be clear, like it would be informative and not an action. That's a good point.
What happens when you click on a card? My understanding is you get a more detailed view, but I don't think we've looked at that yet. There we
So
go.
if you click on the title, but the entire card is not a link.
Okay.
And this is a page within your Drupal site. It's pulling in information from Drupal.org or elsewhere. Is that right?
Yeah, from Drupal.org, the complete information that is there is shown on this page. Maybe for example, we look at web form, all the information that is there on Drupal.org can be seen here.
So it's actually pulling in the entire project page.
Yep, that's right.
Although there's some information in the sidebar, it's compatible with your current version of Drupal that wouldn't show up on Drupal.org.
Does it have? What does it do when you have several versions of the module that are compatible with the current installation of Drupal?
Narendra, would you mind answering?
I think it will install the latest version, latest stable version.
I'm sorry, did you say latest stable version?
Yes, and like it is not handled in project browser. All this handling and installing is done in package manager, so that logic resides there. Basically, we will only be sending the name of the module, that is suppose web form. So, and all the calculations like which module to install is done from the package manager.
So just a couple of initial thoughts. Naturally, this is slightly something I'm noticing is that we haven't looked at. First is the position of the local task for Project Browser. If you could just scroll up just slightly. So we've got list, update, browse, uninstall. I'm actually just wondering if that is the right order. I'm also looking at the breadcrumb there, which I'm not comfortable. Like I'm not. Something doesn't feel right about the fact that we have Drupal's breadcrumbs up at the top, which say, you know, home, administration, extend, browse, projects. But then there's a second level of breadcrumb, which uses, it looks like it uses a kind of a different pattern with the arrows pointing a different direction. But you know, having two levels of breadcrumbs is not a pattern we use in any other parts of Drupal core. So
Aaron, I'm gonna cut you off for a second. Ralph posts a link. Could you open that, please? He says he's already opened an issue about that. It's 330. It's 3300090. And is this actually exactly what Aaron was talking about?
Yeah, that's looks exactly what I was saying. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I do think we, you know, obviously we're about 40 minutes into the meeting, and there's probably a lot we could still talk about here. So I do think, as I said earlier, we need a meta issue to organize the current issues, but then also we maybe need individual issues to look at specific parts of the user interface in more detail. Obviously, we covered like certain elements of it, but there's so much that we could dive into around things like the more detailed view of the you know, this view that we're looking at right now. You know, there's even some of those backend screens. So I think there's definitely more than we can cover in this meeting for sure.
Ralph, do you want to say something more?
As a quick addition first about the issue, my feeling is in that regard, what currently is the browse web form, the second breadcrumb, in the list of proposed resolutions, I'm leaning mostly towards to remove the breadcrumb and replace it with some sort of back button. That is basically the functionality that would be to leave you point you back and towards the project browser search results. And in regards of the meta issue, I could collect a few in regards of UX and post them in a thread on the Slack, and then we can move it into a meta issue afterwards. And there's also one point I forgot to mention. There's also an issue about to restructure that the body field basically of that single project of a module or a project. And there's currently it's open for discussion. I can also post it later. We've done a priority guide to get clear about the order. That's also something which is relevant for the project browser front page with the search results. There's also a problem with that, with those projects, which is currently Drupal core and project browser. Because if you take that in a mobile first view, then the current position of the Drupal.org tab and the Drupal core tab is for mobile results hidden down at the bottom, and that's a problem in my humble opinion. I can also look the issue up later. Okay.
And as Aaron points out, we're more than halfway through the meeting. Should we talk about the filtering options here? Does anyone have additional filters they'd like to see? Suggestions about changing the layout or?
Well, one thing, it's like on the left column, there is a long list of checkboxes, and I think it's called categories, but I think aren't those in some places called packages?
Packages?
Or I think
In case of the core modules, we have used packages for categories. That's right. These are all packages. But for the Drupal mock plugin, these are the categories that are listed.
yeah, and I think there is an ongoing process of grouping or trying to figure out some kind of a grouping for those. So that's a good thing.
Yep.
So something about this layout of the filters here is kind of throwing me off, because it's laid out to look like it almost looks like a table the way it's laid out, and it's not entire. So to me, like, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, so the first column says, you know, development status, maintenance status, security advisory coverage, and then there's a series of checkboxes. The first thing I noticed was there was 3 checkboxes on the right that say, or I guess radio buttons that say show all. In the middle, you've got like active, maintained, covered by a security policy. Yeah, I just something about the way that's laid out that's kind of throwing me off a bit.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines. If you wanted to add a filter for the release status rather than the development status, I might want to see only packages that have a full release, or I might want to see full releases and release candidates, or I might want to include alphas or betas or absolutely everything. So that's not really a binary choice. It's not something with just 2 options. How would that fit into this framework? And this is sort of limited. Is that sort of what you're getting at, Aaron?
Yeah, and I think like I think that this could be the same thing could be done simplifying it with just checkboxes. And as you said, like that would also work for having more options. Because yeah, when you presumably when you add more filters, they would appear above, and that would start to filter down the list. So I think checkboxes and completely removing this sort of show all radio buttons would probably simplify this a little.
Okay, Simo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was also thinking that with these radio buttons, it's it's that proximity thing that it kind of looks like those show all. It's a one group of radio buttons. It says you can select show all, or show all, and the other group of radio buttons is active, maintained, covered by security policy. So that's one group. Like so they should be like if it's a radio buttons that are like in one group, they should be like they should keep the proximity, so they should be next to each other, and there should be space between the others. So it's kind of does the grouping the wrong way visually here.
Right. So I guess we shouldn't use a grid is what you're saying, because using a grid puts these 3 show alls all in the same column, makes them look related.
Yeah, so they should be like in, yeah, they should be in the same column, I think, so that you can see the connection between the selected radio button to the empty ones.
I'm
So
sorry, they should be in the same column or in the same row?
Or
group?
Same column. So in a way, so that the kind of the vertical line has the moving selection. So that in a way you can. So there is no text in between there is no, so that there wouldn't be text between the actual radio button, so that you can see that how the grouping goes. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure. I
think-
mean, for development status, I want active and show all and development status to be visually grouped. So what I think you're suggesting is that we decrease the spacing within the row. So I want, so it should be visually grouped by row rather than grouped by column. Am I right?
So the option should be clearly the two options for the same filter should be closer to each other than to any option of the
Okay, then I think we're saying
any
the
other
same thing.
filter. Yeah.
So do not line up all the show all options. Instead, decrease the amount of horizontal space, put show all close to active in the development status row. And then it's clearer that those are the two options for that row and that they are unrelated to the row below them. And don't use a grid. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would like to recommend, I think you said it earlier, Benji, about having more filters here for the different things. So like, you know, having for development status, having more like, you know, or having more for maintenance status. I think it would be useful. I also just wonder if like the target audience of Project Browser, like will they even understand what any of that means? Like if you're a site builder and you come here and you look at these filters and you look at development status and you're like, it, you know, even like active, like there's no indication what that means. Like there's no indication to a site builder what maintenance status is supposed to mean. I mean, security advisory coverage, sorry, like I guess that implies something, but again, it's really unclear to what any of these mean. Like if you're someone who's worked with Drupal, you probably understand that if you're used to the project page. But like I think, you know, there needs to be more thought from that perspective of people who aren't familiar with these, like what these mean, or if we add more of these filters, how do we communicate what things like what the different development statuses mean? And I think one of the things I think Simo was maybe trying to suggest was like, I actually wonder if this would look better if the groups were vertically aligned. So the first column could say, so if you have the first column says development status, then active below that, then show all below that, then the next column like maintenance status. So kind of flipping it around, because when we look at forms, we're so used to going down the left hand side. So I think going across the way could be that was one of the things that was throwing me off at first. I was expecting it to be each group to be to go down the way, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not sure I like the idea, but it makes sense. I also think, oh yeah, and in the chat, Simo is illustrating that development status as the heading, and then below it, the options active or show all. I also think someone should do a little bit of research into how accurate the development status and maintenance status are. I'm not sure that module maintainers always keep that up to date. It's sort of a chicken and egg problem. If I have been maintaining a module and I lose interest in it, then I I'm likely to forget that I should change the status from active to inactive. And can we have a look at the sort options? I see the default is product usage. Alphabetical, recently created, best match. And I wonder, in case someone chooses a different sort option, maybe it would be nice to be able to filter by project usage, like only show me modules that have at least 1,000 installs, or some sort of range like that. So add a filter for that for when they've chosen a different sort option.
I would also suggest just like, instead of project usage, just say usage, because I think the word project is kind of is unnecessary, but also like could be slightly like like that threw me at first. I was like, wait, what is project usage? So like if it, I think the word just saying usage is probably potentially enough on its own.
And how is best match determined?
That is a part of the plugin that is being worked on by Drupal Association. So when the API is ready, we'll get that feature after then. Like right now, it does nothing. It's sorting with the usage only.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so let's try to wrap things up. Ralph, you wanted to say something?
Just a brief comment about the project usage. Why not stick to the same term used on the card with installs and just use installs instead of project usage?
Okay, Simo?
One thing that could, because there is recently created, but it could be also useful to have sorted by recently updated, because there are maybe a few similar modules that are created like a long time ago. One of them has been updated and the other one has not. So recently updated could be also one option.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suspect that's a better indication of development status than what the module maintainer has checked off on the module page. How recently has there been a release? And then we can debate whether we want to track just full releases or alphas and betas. Any other ideas? Yeah.
Well, just on that, I seem to remember, I don't know who was having this discussion, but a discussion somewhere about like how just because a module doesn't have a release for a couple of years doesn't mean it's like out of date or not maintained. Like some modules are created and they'll work perfectly fine for like years. But that doesn't mean that there is anything better or worse about them just because they've had a release that's been around and it's working fine. I'm not sure if like how frequently a module gets updated is necessarily an indication of like some any useful indicator there.
I kind of think that if we've narrowed it down to a reasonable number of options, that is one thing that I want to have the option of sorting on, even though you make a good point. It's not always an indication of how up to date it is.
Yeah, I guess the thing we also would want to avoid is creating a situation where, I guess this is the case with any of this, where like module maintainers try to game the system and say like, oh, I'm gonna make pointless releases every few months so that my module always appears above this module kind of thing. Like I feel like that's something we want to be mindful of in all of these cases. Maybe more so in that case, because like from a resource perspective, like it physically takes resources to like store releases and create releases on Drupal's infrastructure. So maybe that's something we want to be more mindful of. I mean, it's not a significant resource, but it is a if a module has 100 releases that are completely pointless, like it's kind of a small resource drain. But yeah, I'm not necessarily against it. I think it's just something we want to be mindful of.
Okay. Okay, well, we are coming up against the end of the hour. Because of my schedule, I won't have a chance to update or upload the recording until sometime next week. Thanks for bringing this issue to our attention. I know this is a really active project. And again, if you give me your Drupal.org usernames in Slack, or if you comment on the issue, there's a link to the issue in the Slack channel, I can give you credit for attending the meeting. Any last words? Someone's dog has a last word.
I think Ralph Collar, you will be making the meta issue, or should I create that and then link all the issues which you have created with the project browser?
Is that directed at Ralph?
Yes, yes.
I could. Yeah, I'll just collect a few of mine and a few others I've commented and found, and yeah, but I'll post beforehand a quick comment in the UX chat channel, and with a draft for the meta issue. Because I'm not sure if I remember all the points we brought up today. Some of them were already covered, but a few are not, and definitely have to go into.
I have also like tried to write down based on my understanding, like maybe you can understand them. So I'll also add that in the Slack channel, and you
Okay.
can pick from there if like something which you have missed, or like if there is something to add on.
Cool.
Okay, well, we are at the top of the hour, so thanks again for attending, and do it again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.